Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the fighter's yoke as the alien drone swarm erupted from the cloud bank, their iridescent hulls slicing through the dawn like shards of shattered glass. Her squadron's HUDs lit up with proximity alerts, a chaotic ballet of red blips closing fast on the orbital defense grid above New York. "Vipers, form up on me," she barked into the comms, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. This wasn't a drill. The first wave had punched through the atmosphere hours ago, and now these bastards were gunning for the heart of the grid. Beside her in the virtual wing display, Lieutenant Marcus Hale's icon blinked acknowledgement, his F-77 Raptor banking hard to match her vector. Marcus, always the hotshot with a grin that could defuse a bomb, quipped over the channel. "About time we got some real action. Cap. Those sims were getting boring." Elena shot him a glare through the canopy, though he couldn't see it. Brave to a fault, Marcus dove first into the fray, his missiles streaking out in a fan that vaporized 2 drones mid-swerve. But the swarm adapted, splitting into fractal patterns that no human algorithm could predict yet. The cockpit shuddered as Elena rolled evasive, a plasma bolt grazing her wing and scorching the ablative armor. Alarms wailed, hull integrity at 80%. Below, the city sprawled in defiant lights, skyscrapers bristling with anti-air batteries that spat defiance upward. This was Earth's sky, their first line, and Elena had sworn to hold it. Her co-pilot, the cautious tech whiz Dr. Lila Chen in the rear seat, muttered calculations under her breath. Their shields phase at 2.4 gigahertz, rerouting jammers now. Lila's fingers flew over the console, her precision the anchor to Elena's aggression. Another drone locked on, its weapons humming with that eerie alien whine. Elena yanked the stick, pulling a loop that pressed her into the seat like a vice. "Fox 3, she called, launching countermeasures that bloomed into a deceptive flare storm. The drone veered, but not before clipping Marcus's tail. His voice crackled, edged with pain. "I'm hit, systems flickering. Cap, we need to punch through to the mothership or this swarm's endless." The battle unfolded in brutal staccato, drones exploding in silent fireballs against the void, human fighters weaving through the horde like needles in a gale. Elena's squadron, down to 4 from 8, clustered tight, their lasers carving paths. But the cost mounted. A wingman, young Reyes, spun out in flames, his scream cut short. Elena's jaw clenched. These invaders, whatever they were, sleek, relentless from some distant star, had come uninvited, shattering the fragile peace humanity had clawed post-colonization wars. Lila's voice cut through the din. "I've got a frequency gap. Their comms are vulnerable at theta burst. If we overload it..." Elena nodded, eyes fixed on the looming carrier silhouette piercing the upper atmosphere, a behemoth dwarfing the moon's curve. "Do it, Marcus, cover us!" He whooped, defiant, his damaged bird limping but lethal, drawing fire as Elena accelerated into the swarm's core. The gamble paid off in a cascade of sparks. Lila's hack rippled through the drones, half the swarm stuttering, hulls cracking from internal overloads. But the carrier retaliated, unleashing a boarding pod that slammed into the grid station nearest them, breaching the hull with surgical violence. Alarms blared across all channels. Hull breach, critical systems failing. Elena's heart pounded. This was no skirmish. Lose the grid and Earth lay bare. As they closed on the carrier, a final drone rammed Marcus's fighter, shearing his engine. "Ejecting," he yelled, his pod rocketing free amid debris. Elena banked to shield it, her own weapons depleted, running on fumes and fury. The carrier loomed, its bays opening like a predator's maw. Lila whispered, "We can ram the weak point, exhaust vents." Elena hesitated a beat, the weight of command heavy. Then with a grim resolve she aligned the nose. "For Earth," she murmured, thrusting forward into the storm. Captain Alara Voss gripped the console as the alarm klaxons blared, her knuckles whitening against the worn plasteel. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard shuddered under another barrage from the Zarvian swarm, sleek iridescent fighters darting like hornets through the debris field. "Shields at 40%, she barked, eyes locked on the tactical hologram flickering before her. Beside her, Lieutenant Kyren, the ship's wiry engineer, muttered curses in Mandarin, his fingers flying over auxiliary controls to reroute power. "They're flanking us again," Kai said, voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. He was the cautious one, always calculating odds, but today his caution bordered on fatalism. "That feint we pulled last jump, it's not working." "They're adapting faster than we can." Ilara shot him a glance, her jaw set. Brave to a fault, she'd led her crew through 3 skirmishes since the Zarvians breached Sol's outer defenses. But this was different. Earth's skies had been their cradle of fire, humanity's ragtag fleet holding the line with sheer grit and jury-rigged tech. Now deep in the Orion Arm, the galaxy's vastness mocked their defiance. "Then we improvise," she replied, slamming the comm button. "Gunnery, focus fire on the lead cluster. Don't let them encircle." From the lower deck, Sergeant Mira Torres's voice crackled through, laced with her trademark wit. "Copy that, Cap. But if these bugs keep buzzing, I'm trading this railgun for a fly swatter." Mira was the muscle, broad-shouldered and unyielding, her humor a shield against the Void's cold grip. She'd patched hull breaches with her bare hands back on Luna, earning her spot on the Vanguard. Now her team wrestled with jammed turrets, the external challenge of the swarm's adaptive shielding turning every shot into a gamble. The ship lurched as a plasma bolt grazed the hull, sparks erupting from a nearby panel. Ilara braced against it, tasting the metallic tang of recycled air. Their plan had been simple: lure the Zarvians into the asteroid belt, use the rocks for cover, and pick them off with EMP bursts. Human ingenuity at its finest. Earth's engineers had weaponized junkyard scraps into something lethal. But the aliens' hulls shimmered, absorbing the pulses like water on oil. The early gambit backfired spectacularly. 2 of their escort drones were already drifting slag. "Power surge incoming," Kai warned, his screens lighting up with red alerts. He twisted a dial, diverting energy from life support to engines. The hum of the reactors deepened, a low growl that vibrated through the deck plates. "We push through to the nebula. Maybe the interference will blind their sensors." Ilara nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. The nebula was a double-edged sword. Cover for them, but it could fry their nav systems too. Stakes were high. Losing the Vanguard meant no resupply for the colony outposts. Thousands of human lives hanging on this battered corvette. She keyed the all-hands. "Brace for burn. Mira, keep those guns hot. We're not dying out here without a fight." In the gunnery bay, Mira wiped grease from her face. Her team, just her and young Ensign Patel, huddled over the mounts. Patel's hand shook as he recalibrated a barrel, his wide eyes reflecting the chaos on the view screen. "Sarge, they're closing. What if the nebula traps us?" Mira clapped his shoulder, firm but kind. "Then we make it our graveyard and take half their fleet with us." "Focus, kid. Humanity didn't climb from caves by quitting." She sighted down the rail, firing a salvo that clipped a Zarvian wing, sending it spiraling into an asteroid with a silent bloom of fire. For a moment, triumph flickered. The swarm hesitated, their hive mind recalculating. But the respite shattered. A larger shadow eclipsed the stars. The Zarvian capital ship, a behemoth of crystalline spines emerging from the belt's edge. Its weapons charged with an eerie blue glow, targeting the Vanguard's engines. Kai's face paled. "They're locking on. Evasive maneuvers now." Ilara yanked the yoke, the ship groaning as thrusters fired in protest. Alarms wailed louder, a chorus of impending doom. The nebula loomed ahead, a swirling veil of gas and dust promising sanctuary or suffocation. In that instant, as the first warning shot scorched their flank, Ilara realized their clever adaptation wasn't enough. The galaxy demanded more than grit. It exacted a toll in blood and steel. The klaxons blared through the cramped bridge of the UNS Vanguard, red lights pulsing like wounds across the consoles. Elena Reyes gripped the armrests of her command chair. Her knuckles white as the holographic display flickered. 3 enemy corvettes had punched through the debris field, their plasma lances charging for a broadside that would gut the fleet's flank. "Evade pattern Delta," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos without a tremor. Jax hunched over the engineering station, slammed a fist on his panel, rerouting power from non-essentials. "Shields at 60%, Cap. If we take another hit like that last one, we're venting Atmo to the void." Marco's hands danced across the piloting yoke, the ship groaning as it rolled hard to starboard. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his eyes stayed locked on the nav readout. "They're flanking us, 2 on our tail, one's cutting across the bow. We can't outrun them in this soup." Elena nodded sharply, her mind racing through the dwindling options. The initial plan had been simple. Use the asteroid remnants of Earth's shattered moon as cover to ambush the alien Vanguard, hit their engines with EMP bursts, and scatter them before the main fleet arrived. But the Krell had adapted faster than Intel predicted, their adaptive hulls shrugging off the pulses like rain on ferroglass. Now with the debris field thinning from the crossfire, The vanguard was exposed, and the rest of the squadron was too scattered to regroup. Jax, can you jury-rig the railguns? Overload them for a scatter shot. Buy us some breathing room. She leaned forward, watching the enemy signatures close in, their wedge-shaped ships glinting under the distant sun's glare. He snorted, fingers flying over the diagnostics. Overload? That's suicide with our power grid. But yeah, I can do it. Give me 30 seconds, Marco, keep us dancing. A spark jumped from his console and he cursed under his breath, the acrid smell of overheating circuits filling the air. The first plasma lance streaked past, close enough to rattle the deck plating. Alarms wailed as secondary systems flickered offline. Marco jinked the ship again, but the pursuing corvettes matched him effortlessly, their thrusters blooming blue fire against the starfield. They're locking torpedoes, he said, voice tight. Impact in 20. Elena's jaw clenched. This was the risk they'd all signed up for. Earth's skies turned into a graveyard of twisted metal since the Krell first breached the Sol system 6 months back. Billions gone in the opening salvos, cities reduced to craters, but humanity hadn't broken. Not yet. The Vanguard was one of the last refitted carriers, pieced together from orbital yards with whatever scrap they could salvage. Her crew, a mix of veterans and green recruits bound by grit and the unspoken vow to push back. Fire when ready, Jax, she ordered, unstrapping her harness. If it came to boarding, she'd lead the charge herself, better than waiting for the hull to crack. Got it, Jax yelled, slamming the execute key. The railguns whined to life far beyond spec, spitting a hail of fragmented slugs that bloomed into a shimmering net across the void. The lead corvette veered, but not fast enough. One cluster tore into its flank, venting atmosphere in a silent plume. Cheers erupted on the bridge, short-lived as the other two ships adjusted, their countermeasures flaring, but the overload had cost them. Consoles dimmed, life support hiccuping as power surged back unevenly. Engines at half, Marco reported, his cautious nature shining through in the way he scanned for escape vectors. We can't sustain this. Elena straightened, eyes on the holodisplay where reinforcements blinked. Friendly signatures, but minutes out. The Krell weren't retreating. They were pressing, their formation tightening like a noose. She tapped the comms. All hands, brace for impact. We're not dying here, not today. A torpedo warning pierced the din, the enemy launch streaking toward them. Marco threw the ship into a desperate spin, but the projectile corrected mid-flight, its guidance unerring. Jax lunged for a manual override, yanking a panel open to bypass the fried circuits. Come on, you bastard! The hit rocked them, a thunderous jolt that hurled Elena against her restraints. Bulkheads groaned, sparks flying as the bridge light stuttered. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breach in engineering, 2 crew down, weapons offline. The Vanguard listed, momentum carrying it toward a drifting chunk of moonrock the size of a skyscraper. Through the viewport, the Krell ships loomed, lances recharging for the kill shot. Elena tasted blood from a split lip, but her resolve hardened. Marco, use the rock, slingshot us behind it. Jax, get me auxiliary power. We're turning this trap into their grave. As the ship hurtled forward, the crew scrambled, their movements a frantic ballet of survival. The asteroid's craggy surface rushed up, a jagged silhouette against the battle's glow, promising cover or collision in equal measure. Elena allowed herself a grim smile. Humanity's edge wasn't in the stars, but in refusing to yield them. Captain Reyes gripped the console as the frigate shuddered, alarms blaring like a swarm of angry hornets. Evasive pattern Delta now, she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos on the bridge. Sparks flew from a ruptured panel and Ensign Patel swiped sweat from his brow, fingers dancing over the nav controls. The alien swarm was closing in, their sleek fighters darting like shadows against the asteroid field's jagged silhouette. Reyes had led her crew through worse, but this ambush felt personal. The enemy probing for weaknesses after their last skirmish had cost them the auxiliary drive. Lieutenant Caravas, ever the steady hand, patched in from engineering. Shields at 40%, Captain. That last hit fried the relays. If we take another broadside, we're venting atmo. Her tone was calm, but Reyes caught the edge, the unspoken weight of their dwindling oxygen reserves. They'd been cut off from the fleet for hours, chasing a lead on the alien command node hidden in this debris-choked sector. One wrong move and the whole squad would be space dust. Patel thread the needle. Get us behind that big rock at bearing 270. Reyes leaned forward, eyes locked on the tactical display where red blips swarmed like predators, scenting blood. The ensign nodded, jaw set, and the ship lurched into a tight spin. G-forces pressed them into their seats, the hum of engines straining against the void. A fighter streaked past, its plasma bolt grazing the hull with a deafening screech. Voss's voice crackled again. "Incoming on your 6, brace." Reyes didn't hesitate. "Fire countermeasures. Kara, reroute power to forward guns." The deck vibrated as decoys launched, blooming into false signatures that drew 2 pursuers off course. She squeezed the trigger, and the railguns thrummed to life, lancing blue-white projectiles into the lead enemy craft. It erupted in a silent fireball, debris scattering like confetti. But the victory was short-lived. Another wave peeled off from the swarm, vectoring straight for them. Patel glanced back, his usual wit replaced by grim focus. "They're adapting, ma'am. Learning our patterns faster than we can change them." He was right. These weren't the mindless drones from Earth's early defenses. These aliens thought, anticipated, turned the humans' ingenuity against them. Reyes remembered the briefings. A galaxy-spanning collective viewing humanity as the upstart virus. Their skies had been the proving ground. Now out here it was survival. "Adapt faster, then," she replied, forcing a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "Kara, what's the status on that jury rig?" Voss had been tinkering with a salvaged alien artifact since they picked it up on the last raid. A crystalline relay that might jam their comms. If it worked, they could blind the swarm long enough to punch through to the node. A pause, then Voss's voice laced with triumph. "Online in 30 seconds. But it'll overload our systems, we might lose sensors after." Risky, but sitting ducks was worse. The frigate twisted again, dodging a barrage that lit up the view screen in harsh flashes. Patel whooped as he skimmed an asteroid's edge, the rocky behemoth shielding them momentarily. "Got 'em flanked!" Reyes watched the display, heart pounding. The swarm hesitated, their formation fracturing as confusion rippled through their link, or so she hoped. "Now, Kara." The ship jolted, lights flickering as power surged. On the tack, enemy signatures stuttered, blinking out one by one. Voss's hack was biting, disrupting their hive-mind coordination, but the aliens weren't done. A massive corvette lumbered from the field's heart, its weapons charging with an ominous glow. "That's the node ship," Patel muttered, tracing its outline. Bigger than intel suggested, bristling with turrets. If they destroyed it, the swarm collapsed. If not, reinforcements would flood in, dooming the fleet's flank. Reyes stood steadying herself against the bucking deck. "All hands, battle stations. We're ending this." She coordinated the firing solutions herself, layering human precision over the chaos. Voss fed auxiliary power from life support, the air growing thin as recyclers whined in protest. Patel plotted an intercept, his hands a blur. The corvette fired first, a beam slicing toward them. Patel rolled the ship, the edge of the shot shearing off a sensor array. Alarms wailed anew. "Direct hit incoming, evade," Reyes called, but it was too late for a full dodge. The frigate took the glancing blow, hull breaching in engineering. Voss's comm went dead for a heartbeat, then crackled back. "We're hit, sealing bulkheads. Go, Captain. Finish it." Guilt twisted in Reyes's gut, but she pushed it down. Humanity's edge was this. Grit over surrender. "Patel, align us for the kill shot." The ensign complied, the ship arrowing forward through the blinded swarm. Fighters buzzed harmlessly now, their unity shattered. Reyes targeted the corvette's core, the railguns humming to full charge. The volley struck true, punching through shields and into the alien heart. The node ship bloomed into an expanding inferno, pulling in the remnants of its brood. Silence fell on the bridge, broken only by the hiss of emergency seals. Patel slumped back, exhaling. "We did it." But Reyes's gaze lingered on the damage readouts. Engineering compromised, Voss isolated down there. The fleet would hail soon, but the cost lingered, a scar on their victory. Out here, the galaxy didn't forgive mistakes, and neither did she. The hull groaned under the strain as Jax wrenched the manual override lever, his gloved hands slick with sweat despite the suit's climate controls. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights pulsing across the bridge like a frantic heartbeat. "Come on, you stubborn bastard," he muttered, muscles burning from the effort. Below them, the asteroid field's debris pinged off the shields, each impact a reminder that the Krell ship's plasma barrage had driven them into this death trap. Lena's voice cut through the comms, sharp and unyielding. "Jax, if that doesn't budge, we're ghost meat. The nav core's fried. Reroute power now." He slammed the lever home and the ship lurched, inertial dampeners whining as they veered away from a tumbling boulder the size of a freighter. The view screen flickered, showing the pursuing Krell cruiser, a sleek, thorned behemoth, firing another volley that lit up the void in searing blue. Jax dropped into the pilot's chair, fingers flying over the auxiliary console. His mind raced. The Krell had ambushed their convoy at the edge of the Orion Arm, vaporizing 2 human scouts in seconds. Now with the fleet scattered, it was just the Reliant, their battered corvette, against this hunter. Grit your teeth, adapt, survive. That's what Dad always said back on the farms of Terra Nova. Lena patched in from engineering, her face holographic and streaked with grease. Power's holding at 47%, but the engines are coughing like a chain smoker's lung. We can't outrun them in this soup. She was the cautious one, always calculating odds, but her eyes burned with that same fire Jax knew from their academy days. Unbreakable resolve wrapped in quiet precision. Beside him, Miko leaned over the tactical display, her witty edge dulled by exhaustion but not gone. Outrun? Hell, let's outthink the squid-faced pricks. Their sensors hate dense fields. Jam 'em with the decoy drones. Jax nodded, initiating the launch sequence. 3 small probes ejected from the Reliance bays, their thrusters mimicking the Corvette's signature as they scattered into the rocks. The Krell ship hesitated, its weapons tracking the Ghost for a precious moment. Good call, Jax said, banking hard to port. A chunk of ice shattered against the hull, vibrations rattling his teeth, but they slipped into a narrow crevasse between 2 spinning hulks. The stakes clawed at him. Lose this ship, and the supply line to the forward colonies crumbles. No more med packs for the wounded. No ammo for the grunts holding the line against the Krell's endless waves. Deeper into the field, the comms crackled with static, the dense minerals playing havoc with signals. Lena's voice broke through. Incoming, they've locked on the real us. Shields at 30%. Jax pushed the engines, the Reliant shuddering as it grazed a metallic fragment, sparks erupting from a hull breach alarm. Miko cursed in Japanese, her hands a blur on the weapons board. Firing countermeasures. Eat plasma, you oversized calamari. Torpedoes streaked out, detonating in a bloom of chaff that confused the Krell's targeting just long enough for Jax to spot a gap, a fleeting alley through the chaos. He took it, the ship compressing through the narrow passage with meters to spare. The Krell followed, too bulky, too arrogant to slow down. A thunderous crack echoed as their prow clipped a rogue asteroid, debris blooming like a flower of destruction. Jax's heart pounded. This was human grit at its rawest, turning a slaughter into a knife fight. But the cost mounted. The Reliant's left stabilizer was shearing off, and Lena's updates grew terse. Casualty in Bay 3. We can't take another hit. Emerging from the crevasse, Jax spotted it. A derelict mining rig half buried in regolith, its skeletal arms frozen in eternal grasp. There, dock and repair. Miko, cover fire! She unleashed a barrage, railguns spitting slugs that peppered the Krell's shields. The enemy vessel twisted, returning fire that scorched the void inches from their tail. Docking clamps engaged with a metallic kiss, the Reliant latching onto the rig like a lifeline. Jax killed the engines, the sudden silence deafening save for the hum of emergency systems. Inside the rig they moved fast, suits sealed against the vacuum leaks. Jax led the way through dim corridors lit by flickering emergency strips, his pulse rifle at the ready. The air recyclers wheezed, pumping stale oxygen that tasted of rust and forgotten labor. Lena sealed the breach behind them, her tools sparking as she welded plates. This buys us time, but not much. Krell boarding parties inbound. Miko grinned fiercely, checking her charges. Let 'em come. We've turned worse scrap into weapons. The first tremor hit as Krell grapples latched on, the rig shuddering like a beast in its death throes. Jax crouched behind a bulkhead, sighting down his barrel. Footsteps, clawed, deliberate, echoed from the docking tube. For Earth, he whispered, the words a vow. The hatch blew and tentacles lashed out, but Jax fired first, the shot echoing into the fray. Bullets met chitin, sparks met blood. Lena flanked left, her precision shots dropping a scout. Miko lobbed a grenade that turned the corridor into a storm of shrapnel. They fought room by room, the rig's confines turning the Krell's numbers against them. One alien lunged at Jax, its beak snapping, but he drove his rifle butt into its eye, twisting until it went limp. Sweat stung his eyes. A glancing plasma burn seared his arm, but he pushed on. The camaraderie fueled them. Lena's steady on Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles white against the cold metal, as the asteroid's shadow swallowed the stars. The Zarvian fleet had herded them here, into this godforsaken rock field, cutting off escape vectors with precision that bordered on artistry. Her crew, what was left of them, huddled behind her, faces lit by the flickering emergency lights. Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual smirk, tinkered with a salvaged scanner, muttering curses under his breath. Beside him, Dr. Lena Corvin, the xenobiologist whose calm demeanor hid a spine of steel, scanned the debris for any sign of the artifact they'd come for. Nothing, Jax spat, slamming the device down. These rocks are denser than a politician's promise. If that power core's here, it's buried deeper than my ex's grudges. Elena didn't turn, her eyes fixed on the viewport, where enemy drones swarmed like angry hornets. The initial skirmish in Earth's orbit had been brutal, human fighters outmaneuvered but never outgunned. Yet here in the galaxy's fringes, the Zarvians played for keeps. Their latest tactic, isolate and starve. The Indomitable's engines were fried from the last jump. Life support rationed to hours. They needed that core, a relic from some ancient war, to jury-rig a hyperdrive burst and punch back to friendly lines. A low rumble vibrated through the deck. Alarms blared, proximity alert. "Incoming!" Lena shouted, pointing to a blotch on the scanner blooming into a Zarvian corvette, sleek and predatory, sliding between asteroids with effortless grace. Elena spun, barking orders. Jax, seal the bulkheads. Lena, get to the lab, prep the containment field. We're not dying in a tin can today. Her voice carried the weight of command honed from years scraping by in the void. Brave, maybe, reckless? Often. But she'd be damned if her team went down without a fight. They scrambled. Jax dashed to the engineering bay, his toolkit clanging against his thigh. The ship groaned as the corvette fired a warning shot, grazing the hull and shearing off a sensor array. Sparks flew in the corridor, illuminating Lena's determined stride. She was the cautious one, always double-checking protocols, but now her hands flew over controls, adapting the artifact's theoretical energy signature into something actionable. Elena hit the bridge, sliding into the pilot's seat. The controls responded sluggishly, auxiliary power straining. She plotted a desperate vector. Thread the needle through the asteroid belt, draw the corvette into the kill zone. Humans didn't have the Zarvians' innate spatial awareness. Their biology tuned for zero-G ballets, but they had grit and math. The Indomitable lurched forward, engines whining. Asteroids loomed, jagged silhouettes against the black. The corvette pursued, its weapons charging with an ominous hum audible through the comms. Elena's fingers danced over the console, calculating trajectories on the fly. "Come on, you bastards," she whispered, sweat beading on her forehead. Jax's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, I've got a patch on the engines, 30% thrust. But if we push it, we might blow the core." "Do it," Elena snapped. The ship surged, dodging a spinning boulder by meters. The corvette matched them, firing a plasma lance that scorched the shields. Alarms wailed. Shields at 40%. In the lab, Lena isolated a faint signal. The artifact wedged in a crevasse on the nearest rock. "It's viable, but we'll need to EVA, risky with them on our tail." Elena gritted her teeth. "EVA in a hot zone? Suicide." But staying put was death. "Jax, suit up." "You're going out there." "Me?" Lena's the egghead. "You're the one who can weld under fire. Move." The engineer grumbled but complied, hauling into the airlock. Through the viewport, Elena watched him jet toward the asteroid, tether snapping taut. The corvette closed in, unleashing a barrage. One shot clipped the Indomitable's wing, sending it into a spin. Elena wrestled the controls, stabilizing with bursts from the maneuvering thrusters. Jax reached the crevasse, his suit lights cutting through dust clouds. The artifact pulsed faintly, a crystalline orb etched with alien runes. He pried it free, cursing as a shard sliced his Gielov. Blood welled, but he clamped it, securing the core to his harness. Back aboard, chaos reigned. The corvette rammed them, not a full broadside, but enough to buckle the hull. Elena felt the impact in her bones, the ship shuddering like a wounded beast. "Lena, integrate that thing now." The doctor worked frantically, interfacing the core with the hyperdrive. Energy surged, wild and unpredictable. The Zarvians' tech was elegant. Humans made it work through sheer will. Jack stumbled in, artifact in hand. Got it, but it's unstable. One wrong move, a final volley breached the shields. Explosions rocked the corridors. Elena yelled, "Initiate jump!" "Now!" Lena slammed the override. The core flared, reality warping. The corvette loomed large in the viewport. victory in its targeting array. Then, nothing. Silence. The stars streaked and they were through, tumbling into open space light years away. Elena slumped, breath ragged. Jax nursed his hand, Lena checked vitals. The artifact hummed softly, spent but intact. They'd escaped, but the Indomitable was crippled, hull breaches, power flickering, and the Zarvians wouldn't stop. This was just one battle in a war that had claimed Earth's skies and now clawed at the galaxy's heart. But they'd adapted. Harv the klaxons blared through the dim corridors of the Vanguard, red lights pulsing like open wounds. Elena gripped the railing as the ship lurched, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. "Status, Marcus," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying over a sparking console in the engine bay. "Shields at 20%, Cap. That last barrage from the Krath cruisers fried the auxiliary generators. We're venting plasma. Another hit and we're space debris." His usual wit had sharpened into something feral, eyes darting to the readouts as if willing them to lie. Jax yanked the flight yoke, dodging a swarm of enemy drones that glittered like deadly fireflies against the starfield. "They're flanking us. I can't shake them without thrusters at full burn." His caution had always made him the steady one, but now it twisted into frustration, his jaw set as the Vanguard shuddered under incoming fire. Elena nodded, mind racing. The plan had been simple. Slip through the asteroid belt, hit the Krath supply convoy, and buy time for the Earth fleet to regroup. But the belt had turned against them. Hidden mines, probably Krath tech, had crippled their speed. Now the cruisers bore down, their sleek hulls humming with energy weapons that outclassed anything human. Losing the convoy meant no resupply for the fleet. Billions back home would pay the price in rationed air and fading hope. "Divert power to forward guns," Elena ordered, strapping into the command chair. The ship groaned in protest, lights flickering as energy rerouted. She fired a salvo, watching tracers streak toward the lead cruiser. One drone exploded in a silent bloom of fire, but the others adapted, weaving patterns no human pilot could match. Marcus cursed, slamming a panel shut. "Cap, the jury rig won't hold. We need to vent the core to cool it, but that'll leave us blind for minutes." He glanced up, his grin forced. "Unless you've got a miracle in that brave heart of yours." Jax banked hard, scraping the Vanguard's hull against a tumbling rock fragment. Sparks flew across the viewport. "Incoming torpedo lock. Evasive won't cut it. They're predicting us." Elena's gaze locked on the tactical display. The Krath ships closing like predators, their convoy escorts peeling off to join the hunt. The cost hit her then. Not just the ship, but the camaraderie forged in Earth's burning skies, the grit that had carried them this far. She punched the comm. "All hands, prepare for core vent." Jax, plot a course straight into that dense cluster. Make them think we're fleeing. The pilot hesitated, then nodded, fingers blurring over controls. "Aye, Cap, but if this backfires—" "It won't." Elena's voice was steel, but inside doubt clawed. As the ship dove into the asteroid swarm, rocks pelted the weakened shields, each impact a thunderclap. The Krath followed, overconfident in their superior scans. Marcus initiated the vent, a hiss echoing through the decks as superheated gas expelled into space. Alarms wailed, sensors dark, comms silent. For agonizing seconds, they were ghosts in the void, tumbling blindly amid the debris. Then Jax whispered, "Got him." The makeshift maneuver had worked. The Krath cruisers, too bulky for the tight field, collided with hidden mines Elena's gamble had herded them toward. Explosions lit the blackness, one cruiser shearing apart in a cascade of molten debris. But triumph soured fast. The Vanguard emerged battered, a lucky shot from a surviving drone grazing the bridge. Glass cracked. Elena tasted blood from a split lip. Jack slumped over the controls, clutching his side. "I'm fine," he gasped, but his hands trembled. Marcus rushed to his side, tearing open a medkit. "Hold on, flyboy." "We've got the convoy in sight now, but that drone swarm's regrouping." Elena stood, ignoring the pain lancing her ribs. The path ahead cleared, but at what price? Jax's wound would slow them. Force-rationed meds that might be needed later. The galaxy's last stand felt heavier now, the stars mocking their fragile victory. "Push on," she said, voice steady. "For Earth." Captain Elena Reyes gripped the armrests of her command chair, the screech of alarms slicing through the dim bridge like a plasma blade. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, twisted hulks of what used to be their allied frigates, now just silent warnings in the void. "Status on the jump drive, Jax?" She barked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Jax hunched over his console, fingers flying across the holographic interface, sweat beading on his forehead under the red emergency lights. "It's holding, Cap, but barely. That last hit from the Krell cruiser fried half the coils. We push it now, and we might end up as confetti in that mess." His cautious nature showed in the way he paused, eyes darting to the schematics, always weighing the odds before committing. Mira swiveled in the pilot's seat, her witty grin flashing even as she wrestled the controls. "Confetti? Speak for yourself. I'm aiming for the gap between those wrecks. If we thread this needle, we can flank their formation before they regroup." Her hands danced over the yoke, the ship shuddering as it banked hard, evading a stray ion bolt that lit up the stars like fireworks. Thomas stood at the tactical station, his broad frame tense, reloading his sidearm with mechanical precision. Brave to a fault, he'd been the first to volunteer for the boarding party earlier, but now with the Krell closing in, even he glanced at Elena for the nod. "They're locking weapons. 2 minutes till they paste us. Your call, Captain." Elena nodded sharply, her mind racing through the fragments of their original plan. The fleet's assault on the Krell outpost was meant to be a surgical strike. Disable their relay station, cut off reinforcements, buy Earth a breath to regroup. But the aliens' adaptive shields had turned it into a slaughter, their bioships morphing mid-battle like living nightmares. Their own destroyer, the Vanguard, was the last intact vessel, limping on fumes after the ambush. Resource shortage hit hard, power cells at 23%, oxygen recyclers straining, and ammo bays half empty from the failed breach. "Alter course, Mira. Take us through the debris." Jax reroute auxiliary power to forward shields. "Thomas, prep the torpedo tubes. We're not running blind." The words came out clipped, each one an anchor in the chaos. She could feel the weight of the crew's eyes on her, the unspoken trust that had carried them from Earth's burning skies to this galactic fringe. The Vanguard plunged into the field, hull groaning as chunks of metal pinged off the reinforced plating. Mira whooped softly, threading between a shattered engine nacelle and a floating turret, the ship's thrusters flaring blue against the black. "See? Like sewing with a needle and thread made of neutronium." But Jax's warning chime cut the moment short. "Cap, the coils are overheating, jump drives destabilizing. If we fire the torps now, we blow our only shot at evasion." Elena's jaw tightened. The plan had been simple. Use the debris as cover, launch a spread of warheads to punch through the Krell's flank, then jump to the rally point. Earth Command needed that relay down, or the invasion wave would hit Sol unopposed, but one glitch and they'd be just another statistic in the war logs. "Override the safeties," she said finally, meeting Jax's wide eyes. "We adapt or we die out here." He hesitated, fingers hovering, then nodded grimly. "Rerouting. Hold on. It's gonna buck like a solar flare." Thomas loaded the final torpedo, his voice a low rumble. "For the homeworld." The ship lurched as the weapons bay doors hissed open. Mira pushed the engines to their limit, weaving past a drifting escape pod that spun lazily in the void. On the view screen, the Krell cruiser loomed larger, its organic hull pulsing with inner lights, tendrils extending like seeking vines. "Fire!" Elena commanded. The torpedoes streaked out in a brilliant arc, plasma trails cutting the darkness. They slammed into the cruiser's shields, blooming into fireballs that rippled the alien energy field. For a heartbeat, cheers echoed on the bridge, Mira pumping a fist, Thomas grinning fiercely. Then the backfire hit. The jump drive whined, a high-pitched keen that rattled Elena's teeth. Jax cursed, slamming panels. "Coils breached!" "We're venting plasma." Shields dropping to 40%. The Krell returned fire, a barrage of bioplasmic lances that tore through the debris. One grazed the Vanguard's flank, shearing off a sensor array in a shower of sparks. Alarms wailed anew, the ship listing as secondary systems failed. Mira fought the controls, sweat slicking her brow. "Lost lateral thrusters. We're drifting right into their kill zone." Elena's mind whirled. The early plan had crumbled. Flanking turned to exposure, the torps only buying seconds. The cost was immediate, a power surge that dimmed the lights, air growing thick with the tang of ozone. If they didn't adapt now, the galaxy's edge would claim them, leaving Earth's skies undefended. "Emergency protocol," she snapped, unstrapping her harness. "Jax, isolate the drive and give me manual overrides. Mira, plot a slingshot around that wreck, use its gravity to swing us clear." Thomas, get to the ventral turret. Buy us time. The crew moved as one, no questions, just action born of grit and shared desperation. Elena stood at the heart of it, watching the stars wheel wildly, knowing this pivot might save them, or doom the last hope for humanity's stand. The void pressed in, cold and unforgiving, but her resolve burned brighter, a spark against the encroaching dark. Elena gripped the console edge as the Vanguard's hull groaned under another barrage. Sparks danced from the overhead panels, casting jagged shadows across Jax's sweat-slicked face. He yanked a cable free with a curse, his fingers black with grime. This jury-rigged shield's holding by spite alone, he muttered, voice tight over the alarms. Mira's hands flew across the piloting yoke, dodging debris that lit up the view screen like fleeting stars. The alien swarm pressed closer, their sleek fighters weaving in patterns no human sim could predict. Options? Elena barked, eyes locked on the tactical display. Red icons swarmed their position, the remnants of the fleet scattered like chaff. Their initial plan, lure the enemy into the asteroid belt for an ambush, had backfired spectacularly when the aliens adapted, turning the rocks into a kill zone of their own. Now fuel cells critical, oxygen recyclers straining, they were down to one shot. Jack slammed a panel shut. We vent the auxiliary bays, create a plasma wake to scramble their sensors. Buys us 30 minutes maybe, but it'll fry half our external arrays. His usual wit was gone, replaced by the raw edge of someone who'd seen too many crewmates vented into the void. Mira glanced back, her cautious nature flaring. And if they adapt again? We're blind in the nebula. No backup, no resupply. She banked hard, the ship shuddering as an enemy pulse grazed their flank. The cabin lights flickered, and for a heartbeat Elena tasted the metallic tang of recycled air turning stale. Elena straightened, decision crystallizing. Human grit wasn't about flawless plans. It was about the pivot when the galaxy laughed at your odds. Do it, Mira. Plot the vector through the densest fog. Jax, sink the vents to our thrusters. Make it look like we're fleeing blind. She tapped the comm, voice steady for the skeleton crew below. All hands brace for hard maneuvers. We're not dying in their playground. The vents hissed open, spewing ionized gas in a brilliant tail that bloomed against the black. Alien fighters veered, their formations fracturing as sensors overloaded in the electromagnetic storm. Mira punched the engines, the Vanguard surging into the nebula's swirling haze. Colors bled across the view screen, gaseous tendrils in electric blues and furious reds, hiding them like a shroud. But the cost hit fast. Alarms wailed anew. Comms down, navigation glitching from the overload. Jax cursed, patching what he could with makeshift wires. Lost contact with the away team on the derelict. If they're still alive out there? He trailed off, the unspoken weight hanging heavy. Elena nodded, jaw set. The galaxy had taken their first skies, scorched Earth's orbit in fire. But here, in the last stand, they'd carve a path with whatever broke first, their ship or the enemy's arrogance. A faint blip flickered on the off-screen. A distress ping from the derelict station, faint but insistent. Mira's eyes widened. It's them. But the swarm's regrouping. Push harder, Elena said, the words a vow. The nebula closed around them, a velvet trap laced with promise. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge vibrating through her bones as the stellar Vanguard's engines pushed them into the heart of the nebula. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, painting the dim console lights red across her face. Status on the core breach? She barked, eyes locked on the holographic display where enemy signatures swarmed like angry hornets. Lieutenant Kai Ren, her chief engineer, wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying over a jury-rigged panel. The wiry man had been up for 36 hours straight, his usual sharp wit dulled by exhaustion, but his hands never faltered. Containment holding at 60%, Captain. That last hit from their plasma lancers cracked the outer shielding. If we take another direct, it'll cascade. Whole ship goes up like a firework. He glanced up, his dark eyes steady despite the tremor in his voice. We need to vent the auxiliary reactors or reroute power from weapons. Your call. From the navigation console, Sergeant Mira Hale spun her chair toward them, her braided hair whipping like a lash. The pilot's cautious nature had saved their hides more times than Alara could count, but now her face was etched with frustration. Reroute, and we're blind in this soup. Nebula's interfering with sensors already. Can't dodge what we can't see. She jabbed a finger at the holomap, where the alien fleet's lead cruiser loomed, its tendrils of energy weapons probing the gas clouds. They're herding us toward that gravitational shear. One wrong vector and we're spaghettified. Ilara's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their desperate plan. The Vanguard was the last human vessel in this forsaken arm of the galaxy, cut off from reinforcements after the fall of the Orion Line. The Krell, those biomechanical horrors with their hive mind tactics, had turned the stars into a slaughterhouse. But humanity's edge had always been adaptation, not raw power. They jury-rigged the ship's deflector array into a makeshift EMP burst earlier, crippling a squadron of fighters, but it had drained their reserves. Now, with the nebula's interference masking the Krell's approach, every second ticked like a bomb. "Ren, vent the auxiliaries," Ilara decided, her voice cutting through the din like a knife. "Hale, plot a slingshot around that pulsar remnant. Use the gravity well to mask our signature." She unstrapped, rising to her feet as the ship groaned under the strain. The crew, fewer than 50 now after the boarding skirmish, watched her from their stations, faces gaunt but resolute. No speeches. They knew the stakes. Lose here and the Krell would punch through to Sol unchecked. The deck shuddered as Ren initiated the vent, a low whoosh echoing through the vents like the ship's dying breath. Alarms spiked, then quieted, power surging back to life in flickering waves. Mira's hands danced over the controls, the Vanguard banking hard into the nebula's swirling mists. Purple tendrils of ionized gas streaked past the viewports, illuminating the twisted wreckage of Allied ships long silenced. "They're locking on," Mira warned, her tone clipped. 3 Lancers inbound, ETA 20 seconds. Ilara strode to the tactical station, overriding the auto-targeting with manual overrides. Her fingers, calloused from years of simulations and real scrapes, adjusted the firing arcs. "Fire countermeasures. Then give me a firing solution on their command node." The Krell ships were organic mechanical hybrids, vulnerable at the neural hubs where their collective consciousness interfaced. Hit that and you could disrupt an entire wing. Plasma bolts lanced through the haze, missing the Vanguard by meters, as Mira's evasive maneuvers painted evasive trails in the gas. The countermeasures bloomed like false stars, drawing fire away. Ilara's shot connected, a brilliant azure beam from their adapted railgun piercing the lead cruiser's hull. Sparks erupted, the alien vessel listing as secondary explosions rippled along its carapace. But victory was fleeting. The nebula parted like a veil, revealing the Krell Armada's full might. Dozens of biomechanical behemoths, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent veins. A fresh wave of fighters detached, swarming toward them. "They're adapting," Ren muttered, scanning readouts. That EMP rattled them, but they're modulating shields now. "We bought minutes, not hours." Mira's console beeped urgently. "Shear's closing fast, Captain. If we slingshot, we might clip their flank, but it'll tear our hull plating." Ilara nodded, the weight of command settling like lead in her chest. "Do it, and Ren, prep the boarding torpedoes. If we get close enough, we're going in hot." The plan was madness, human boarders against Krell drones, but they'd done the impossible before. On Europa, Kai had rewired a derelict probe to breach an ice fortress. In the Vega skirmish, Mira had threaded a needle through asteroid fields no AI could match. Together they'd turn the tide or die trying. The Vanguard hurtled forward, engines screaming against the gravitational pull. Fighters buzzed past, grazing the shields with acidic bursts that ate through armor like paper. Ilara braced as the ship twisted, the shear's tidal forces yanking at the frame. Metal groaned, a panel sparking overhead, but they held. In the chaos, a comms burst crackled through, faint human voices from a ghost signal. "Vanguard, this is Echo Squad. We've got your back. Hold the line. Reinforcements? Impossible." The Orion line was dust, but the signal strengthened, pinpricks of IFF tags appearing on the map. Survivors piecing together from the wreckage. Hope flickered, sharp and unfamiliar. All hands, Captain Reyes gripped the console as the bridge shuddered, alarms blaring like wounded beasts. Sparks flew from a ruptured panel, and she wiped sweat from her eyes, tasting the metallic tang of recycled air gone sour. "Status on the core breach?" she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Ensign Patel, his face smeared with grease, slammed a fist on his station. "Containment holding at 30%, ma'am. If we don't vent the auxiliary plasma lines in the next 2 minutes, it'll cascade to the main reactor." His fingers danced over the holographic display, rerouting power with frantic precision. But the ship's groans deepened, a low rumble that vibrated through the deck plates. Lieutenant Karavos, ever the steady hand, leaned over from navigation. Incoming signatures. 3 Krell interceptors closing fast. They're targeting our weakened shields. Her eyes narrowed, calculating trajectories in her head. She was the cautious one. The planner who weighed every risk, but now her jaw set with that quiet resolve humans carried into the void. Reyes nodded sharply, her mind racing through options thinner than starlight. The Odyssey had been their flagship, humanity's bold thrust into the galaxy's heart. But after months of skirmishes, she was a battered relic. Earth's skies had been the proving ground. Dogfights against the first alien probes turning boys into aces overnight. Now deep in the Orion Arm, the galaxy itself was the battlefield, and the Krell Empire wanted no human interlopers. Divert all non-essential power to forward batteries, Reyes ordered. Patel, initiate the vent sequence. Voss, plot an evasive that buys us time. Use the debris field from that last frigate. The plan was a gamble, born of desperation. Lure the Krell into the floating graveyard of twisted metal and shattered hulls, where human ingenuity could turn junk into a trap. The ship lurched as thrusters fired, weaving through hulks that spun lazily in the vacuum. Patel's hands trembled slightly as he triggered the vents. A muffled whoosh echoed through the hull, followed by the acrid scent of ionized gas. Breach sealed for now, but we've got microfractures spiderwebbing the outer plating. Voss's console lit up with proximity alerts. They're on us. Firing patterns suggest they're coordinating a pincer, 2 flanking, 1 straight down the throat. Reyes strapped into her command chair, the harness biting into her shoulders. She remembered the early days when humanity's first warp drive had punched through the solar system's edge. Met not with welcome, but with Krell scouts who saw primitives playing with fire. We'd fought back with grit and scrapyard fixes, turning cargo haulers into fighters. But this was different. The Krell hive mind didn't negotiate. They eradicated. Fire at will, she said, her voice calm steel. Turbolasers lanced out, carving glowing scars across the lead interceptor's hull. It exploded in a bloom of plasma. Debris sprang like shrapnel, but the others adapted, their angular ships darting with eerie synchronicity, returning fire that hammered the Odyssey's shields. A direct hit rocked them. Lights flickered and Patel cursed as his panel shorted. Shields at 15%. We can't take another volley. Voss spun her chair. Ma'am, if we deploy the emergency buoys, rig them with the spare fusion cells, we could create a false heat signature. Draw them into the debris core. Reyes met her gaze, seeing the spark of that human spark. Not brute force, but clever redirection. Do it, Patel. Jury-rig the charges. Make it hot enough to mimic a warp signature. As they worked, the bridge filled with the sharp crackle of welding torches and urgent commands. Patel, the witty engineer who'd once joked about turning Krell tech into beer cozies, now focused with grim intensity, splicing cables that sparked and hissed. Voss plotted the bait's path, her cautious nature yielding to bold improvisation. The buoys launched with a series of thumps, streaking into the debris like decoys in a storm. The Krell hesitated, their sensors pinging the anomalies, then dove in pursuit. Reyes watched on the main viewer as the trap closed. The buoys detonated in sequence, igniting a chain reaction among the volatile wrecks. Explosions rippled outward, a cascade of fireballs that engulfed the flanking interceptors. One survived, limping free, its hull venting atmosphere in frozen plumes. It turned toward the Odyssey, weapons charging with a malevolent hum. They're not done, Voss warned, her voice tight. Reyes unstrapped, grabbing a handheld from the rack. Neither are we. All hands prepare for boarding protocols. If they want to fight up close, we'll give them one they remember. The ship trembled again, not from weapons but from the strain of holding together. In the galaxy's vast indifference, humanity's triumphs were carved from such moments. Camaraderie forged in the breach, ingenuity against the odds. But as the Krell boarders breached the outer locks, Reyes knew this victory would cost them dear. A scar on the stars that no repair could fully mend. The hum of the engines faded to a whisper as the Endurance breached the final debris field, its hull scarred but unyielding. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the command rail, her knuckles white against the worn metal, eyes locked on the viewport where the galactic core loomed like a dying ember. Beside her, Dr. Kai Ren adjusted his tactical display, his fingers flying across holographic keys, while engineer Mira Voss patched the last flickering shield emitter from her station. The alien fleet's remnants drifted in the void, twisted hulks of crystalline ships, their once gleaming spires shattered by human ingenuity. "Shields at 60%, Mira said, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. "We took a hit from that last pulse cannon, but she's holding." "Barely." Elena nodded, not trusting words yet. The stakes had never been higher. One wrong maneuver and the Endurance would join the graveyard of stars. Their mission, to deliver the counter-virus that would neutralize the Zerathian neural net, had cost them half the crew, including Jax, the witty gunner whose quick shots had saved them in the asteroid skirmish. His absence hung in the air like smoke, a reminder that triumph came laced with loss. Kai's display beeped urgently. "Incoming signature. It's the Zareth Queen ship powering up. They've adapted to our jamming. Weapons hot in 30 seconds. Elena's mind raced, pulling from the fragments of plans that had crumbled one by one. The initial stealth run through the nebula had failed when a sensor drone spotted them. The boarding attempt on the relay station backfired, trapping Mira in a collapsing corridor until Kai's improvised EMP pulled her out. Now with the core's gravity well pulling them in, adaptation was their only weapon. "Divert auxiliary power to the forward arrays," Elena ordered, her tone clipped, brave resolve masking the knot in her gut. "Mira, rig the payload for proximity detonation. We go in close, too close for their shields to adjust." Mira hesitated, her cautious nature surfacing in the furrow of her brow. "That'll fry our own systems. We might not make it back." "We won't," Kai interjected, his wit cutting through the tension like a laser. "But the virus will. It's what Jax would have said. Punch him in the face and worry about the bruise later." Elena met their eyes, the camaraderie forged in fire binding them tighter than any chain. "For Earth, for everyone we lost." The Endurance surged forward, engines roaring defiance. Alarms blared as Zerathian fire raked their flanks, shields sparking in protest. Kai unleashed a barrage of decoy drones, each one blooming into false signatures that drew the enemy's fire. Mira's hands trembled slightly as she armed the payload. A sleek probe loaded with the virus, humanity's clever twist on the aliens' own biotech. The Queen ship filled the viewport, its vast form pulsing with bioluminescent veins, a behemoth designed to crush worlds. Elena steered them into its shadow, the gravity tugging like invisible claws. "Now," she barked. Mira launched the probe. It streaked away, burrowing into a weak seam in the hull before detonating in a cascade of viral code. The Queen ship shuddered, lights flickering as the neural net unraveled. Ships across the fleet going dark, their coordinated assault fracturing into chaos. But the Endurance paid the price. Systems overloaded, the ship listing toward the core's maw. Kai sealed bulkheads buying seconds. Mira patched a failing thruster, her ingenuity shining in the sparks. Elena fired retros, wresting control from the void's grasp. They cleared the debris by a hair, the Queen ship erupting in a silent bloom of debris behind them. Cheers echoed faintly in the bridge, but Elena's gaze lingered on the stars. The galaxy was theirs now, won through grit and sacrifice, but the cost-etched scars that time wouldn't erase. Jax's station sat empty, a silent testament. As the Endurance limped homeward, the first human colony beacon flickered to life on a distant world. Hope amid the ruins, earned in blood and unbreakable will.